Hi, this is Ash with Spark 59. By way of introduction, I'd like to say that first and foremost, I'm an entrepreneur and I love entrepreneurs. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this is the sad reality. Most startups fail, most products in general fail. The more interesting number, though, is not the high failure rate, but the fact that most startups that actually succeed report having drastically changing their plans along the way. So what that tells us is that what separates successful entrepreneurs from those that don't quite make it is not necessarily starting with a better plan or vision, but rather finding a plan that works before running out of resources. That's what we're going to cover in this course, a systematic process for quickly vetting new product ideas and raising your odds of building a successful product. But before we do that, let's take a step back and see why building successful products is so hard. First, there's a general misconception around how successful products get built. The media loves stories of visionaries who see the future and chart a perfect course to intersect it. The reality, however, rarely plays out quite as simply. One of the most visionary entrepreneurs of our time is the late Steve Jobs, but even the unveiling of the visionary computer, the iPad, in Steve Jobs' own words, were years in the making, built on several incremental innovations and lots of failures of software and hardware along the way. The second reason why building products is hard is that product development gets in the way. This one is a little counterintuitive because the main purpose of a startup is to build a great product. But here is how this happens. Most products fail not because we fail to build what we set out to build, but because we fail to find the right customers and markets for our products. In a traditional product development cycle, we engage customers and markets a little bit at the front end, but mostly at the tail end of the process, after we release our product. There's a large middle where we disengage from customers for several weeks or months at a time while we build and test our product. It is usually during this time that we either build too much or are led astray and build the wrong product. And finally, we pay a lot of lip service to listening to customers, but you simply can't ask customers what they want. You have to know how to listen to them. A lot of people cite this quote and declare it hopeless to talk to customers. But even hidden in this quote, there is a nugget of information. There is a customer problem statement. Had customers really said they wanted faster horses, they would have been asking for something faster than their existing alternative, which happens to be a horse. Given the right context, customers can clearly articulate the problems they want solved, but it's not their job to come up with the solution. That's your job as the entrepreneur. Simplifying even further, I would say that the number one reason why products fail is because we waste time, money, and effort building the wrong product. I attribute the entrepreneur's often unbridled and singular passion for their killer idea or solution as the top contributor to this failure. Let's see how this story plays out. When entrepreneurs get hit by an idea, they typically fall in love with the solution, or what I like to call awesome, and immediately rush to start building out their solution. We are often told to build something unique or different, so we purposely define the solution in such a manner that when we look around, we find no competition. While this makes us happy, it can be a false positive. True unfair advantages are rarely built from the solution. We'll cover this in great detail later in the course. One of the most commonly cited unfair advantages is being first to market. Take a look at these companies. None of them were first movers on their markets, but rather they were all fast followers. One could actually argue that being really first to a market can be an unfair disadvantage, because the burden of learning and marketing a new product is all on the first mover. Over time, the legacy of being a first mover can actually create more mass or inertia, allowing a fast follower to piggyback on the learning of the first mover and getting first in the customer's mind, which is really the advantage that can make a difference, not simply being first to move. Another more immediate and pressing reality, though, we face as entrepreneurs is affording our creative addiction. In other words, how do we establish enough runway for our product? The first place we often turn to are people with bags of money. These could either be internal stakeholders in the company or external stakeholders like investors. But when we pitch them only our solution, we often get shown the door and given the polite no. Let's see why. When external stakeholders like investors look at your company, they don't care about your solution. An investor does not get excited because you're using some cutting edge technology in an innovative way. Rather, investors are in the business of making a return on their investment, and they view your company purely from that lens. The first thing they look for is evidence of traction or engagement with your customers and markets. Next, they care about the intersection of your cost structure and your revenue streams. In other words, they want to know how will you build a scalable and profitable business. They don't really care about who your customers are, but they do care about how many people they represent. In other words, how big is this market? How big is this problem? And finally, they worry about things like defensibility. They'd like to know if you were to build a successful business, how you plan on keeping competition and copycats at bay, because they will come. But of all these things, investors care about traction over everything else. Since traction is the engagement of your product with customers, it is actually logical to not start with investors, but rather start with customers. So let's take a look and see what customers really care about. When customers see your company or product, they too don't care about your solution. Customers don't wake up one day and say, I need to buy a product written in Rails, Django, Objective-C, or the next hot programming language. Customers buy products to solve underlying problems they have. The way you tell them about your product, though, is not through your solution, but rather by crafting an effective, unique value proposition. The unique value proposition is the intersection of your customer's top problems and your solution. The job of the unique value proposition is not to close the sale, but to start the conversation. People are constantly bombarded by advertising and offers from all over the place. The first battle is just getting noticed. As we'll discuss later, crafting an effective unique value proposition is more easily said than done. An important first step is narrowing down on your prototypical early customer or early adopter who needs your solution the most. While we would all like to build a mainstream product like Facebook that is used by practically everyone around the world, even Facebook started with a very narrow definition of an early adopter, which happened to be a college student at Harvard. When you try to market to everyone, you end up marketing to no one. If you're able to get this far, what matters next to customers is the price or currency you place on your product or service. In order for customers to part with their hard-earned money, the value of your promise has to be commensurate with your pricing. It is important to point out that the currency of exchange might not be money, but other things like attention or engagement, such as in the case of a multi-sided market that uses an ad-based model. There you aren't charging your users money to use your product, but you're still building an asset in terms of how much time and attention they give your product, which you hope to monetize, in this case, through advertisers. The thing that matters the most to customers here, though, is your unique value proposition or promise. That's what gets their initial attention. The reason I showed you all these different worldviews is so we can attempt to redefine the true product of an entrepreneur. The true product of an entrepreneur isn't just building an awesome solution, but turning that solution into a question mark. And in fact, turning everything on the canvas into a question mark. The true product of an entrepreneur isn't the solution, but a working business model. And the true job of an entrepreneur is systematically de-risking that business model over time through a series of conversations. So how do you do all of this? You can find the long answer in a book I wrote called Running Lean. In the book, I systematically walk you through the process of vetting new product ideas and building successful products. It's chock full of real-world case studies and field-tested tactics for doing all this. But here is the condensed version of the book, shown here as 3 core meta principles. The first meta principle, document your plan A, is critical because as entrepreneurs we are especially gifted at creating reality distortion fields around ourselves and convincing ourselves that we are on the right path. While passion and determination are key attributes for success, left unchecked, they can also turn the journey into a faith-based one, largely driven by dogma versus facts. Traditionally, we have used business plans for this purpose. Raise your hand if you've ever written a business plan before. Now leave your hand up if you enjoyed the process. Usually when I ask a room full of people this question, all but 1 or 2 hands go down. The intention behind business plans is sound, but the format is all wrong. The biggest issue I have with business plans is that they take several weeks to write, and the people that make you write them don't read these plans themselves. They instead ask for the one-page executive summary, the 10-page slide deck, or the 30-second elevator pitch. If you're going to have to condense your business plan down anyway, why not start there and avoid the waste in the first place? Especially since the perfect plan is a myth and it's going to change a lot along the way. The alternative is creating a more portable one-page business model, which looks something like this. This is the lean canvas format I adapted from Alex Osterwalder's original canvas, which I'll show in a second. If you've ever written a business plan before, you'll immediately recognize most of the building blocks on the canvas. Compared to a business plan, the lean canvas takes just 20 minutes to create. It forces you to be concise, and because it fits on a page, people can't help but read it and have an opinion. That last part is absolutely key, because conversations with people other than yourself is the key part to empirical learning. This is what Alex Osterwalder's original canvas looks like, and here I've highlighted the changes that I made. I'm not going to go into the details of my changes, but if you're curious, you can check out this blog post I wrote just on that topic. But before we go on, I do want to revisit the 3 meta principles one more time. These meta principles are deeply rooted in the realization that your business model, not your solution, is a true product of your startup. Thinking about your business model as a product is particularly empowering because it allows you to apply well-known product development principles to the building of your business model. For instance, the first principle, documenting your plan A on the canvas, is an application of the divide and conquer technique. You take the tough problem of building a successful business and break it up into its component parts, which makes them more manageable. The next principle of tackling the riskiest parts first is also taken from the product development playbook. If you had 6 months to deliver a product, you wouldn't start with what's easiest, but rather prioritize working on the riskier stuff first, so there are no last-minute surprises as you approach the deadline. Similarly, in a startup, we need to prioritize testing what's riskiest in the business model versus what's easiest or more fun. You can see where I'm going. For most products, the solution isn't what's riskiest. Once you've got your starting plan and risks identified, you then systematically test your plan using experiments going from highest risk to lowest risk. After you run an experiment, there is a learning feedback loop that goes backwards, and you use that to update your risks from there. And eventually, it goes all the way back to where you update your business model. Next time, I'm going to show you how you can capture your initial vision or plan in just 20 minutes, and from there we'll dive a little deeper into the other 2 meta principles. Until then, take care. Thanks.